What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Duress, and today we'll be diving back into our Silver Tempest set review. In our first part, we rated the Pokemon, and today we'll be getting into the trainers. If you'd like to hear more about the Pokemon or the rating system, I definitely recommend checking out that video, but without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right on into it. So, for our first trainer here, we have Brandon, supporter. It says, you can only play this card if it's the last card in your hand. Draw a card for each of your bench Pokemon in play. Yours and your opponent's. So draw a card for each, not for just yours. This is pretty bad. So this is basically a conditional Colress, which, I mean, Colress is a very good card, but just play Colress, given kind of the deck structures of Expanded. You have VS Seeker, so you're never really playing for Colresses because it is pretty handicapped in the first game. Like, it is pretty not, I shouldn't say handicapped, it is pretty not good in the early turns, just because your opponent will play around it if they see it. And yeah, Colress is just strictly better, honestly. I guess you could make some sort of argument that you could put this in like the Hisuian Arcanine, like Granbull Radiant Venusaur deck, because, you know, it frequently wants its hand very low, but there's just so many better options in Expanded, and it's refilling your hand, which is honestly kind of detrimental. So this is at most a 1, but just like I don't think a 1, it's kind of an insult to like 1 cards. Like, it's just not playable, honestly. Candace, I think, is probably somewhere in the 1 range. It's also a supporter. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of water Pokemon and water energy cards you find there and put them into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. I think it's potentially interesting, maybe in like a Frostmoth deck. I think Palkia, like, those decks have much better options in terms of finding Pokemon. But Candace can like kind of flood, like Frostmoth decks can kind of flood out into a bunch of water energies, and I guess you could pull a lot more water energies out of your deck with Candace. But even at that, like, I think I'm reaching very, very, very hard, being very hopeful. The combination of like not being able to tutor like the exact cards when you basically can do that, with a bunch of items, a lot of which are in standard. Like, you have your Capacious Buckets, you have your Ultra Balls, you have your whatevers, you blah blah blahs. This is just so skippable in terms of being a supporter. Like, I'd rather just draw cards and find these cards, honestly, than dig 7 down, because there's also the potential to just hard brick on this, like just miss on 7, which I think is fairly unlikely, but if and when it does happen, which, I mean, it will happen some amount of the time, you are going to lose the game from using your supporter on nothing. So yeah, that's a hard miss. Capture Aroma is one of the worst, probably the worst card in the set. Flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand. If it's tails, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand. I, as the player, need agency over the cards that I am searching for consistency. And when I don't have that agency, right, like when it's just on a coin flip and I can't decide which card to like search up, like, this is just so bad. I guess there is some world where you could say like, oh, put it in a coin flip deck because you can manipulate your coin flips. But if you want to search tails and you search heads, like a lot of them say like, oh, if you flip a tails, right, flip again. So like, if you want to flip a tails and you flip a heads, like, you don't have that option. So yeah, I think it's very bad. Very bad 0. Earth and Seal Stone is our first tool of the set. I guess there's like 3, maybe more. I think 4 actually. Sorry, but yeah, this it's got to be attached to a Pokemon V. The Pokemon V this card is attached, you can use this V-Star power, and then it has a V-Star power that has a triple colorless attack that says, put damage counters on all of your opponent's Pokemon V until they each have 100 HP remaining. I think it's kind of interesting in terms of like a spread option. You definitely need to be using this early, and you, I think, want to be using this on like an evolving Pokemon so that you can triple accelerate onto it. I give it a 1 just because spread is not a terribly great option, and having to go on a V is just so crippling. I just can't imagine it. Like, it's not going to really find new homes moving forward beyond Scarlet and Violet. Emergency Jelly is a hard 0. I think there's some way to... Oh, I should probably read the card first. Attach a Pokemon. So this is a tool. At the end of each turn, if this Pokemon, this card is attached to, has 30 HP or less remaining and has any damage counters on it, heal 120 damage from that Pokemon. So you can't do any weird tricks with like low HP Pokemon or whatever. This is kind of interesting with like damage pumps. Like you could move damage all onto one creature if there's a bunch of damage spread around, and then heal that off with the tool. But again, as we just talked about with the Earth and Seal Stone, spread's really not a fantastic option, so I don't see really any home or purpose for this. And I think it's just a hard miss and a skip. Up next, we have Forest Seal Stone. This is another tool, so that's 3. Ability is Star Alchemy. It is a V-Star power. During your turn, you can search for 1 card. No restriction. Put it into your hand, and then shuffle. This is the best card of the set. This is very, very, very easily the best card of the set. Funny enough, it's only a 4. And the reason it's only a 4 is because, as we just talked about, this only gets worse moving forward with Scarlet and Violet. This only has less and less homes because Vs, V-Stars, and V-Maxes will not be printed past Scarlet and Violet once Scarlet and Violet comes out. So the card pool gradually getting larger with lowercase EXs means that this is not going to have a growing number of homes. However, I do think that it has a solid amount of homes right now. One home I think is my Rainbow Sylveon deck, which was in one of my, I think my first gameplay video. I would be very interested to play this in Shadow Rider Calyrex though, because that is a V Pokemon, or well, VMAX, but a V Pokemon, so you can attach this to it. That doesn't have a V-Star power or attack. Like, this is incredible in that deck. This is just an insane consistency piece. You could also put it in something like Volcarona, which I think is kind of funny, because a lot of that deck can just like flood out until like it can like literally research into like another Volcarona and 6 energy. So when you have, you know, a Forest Seal Stone just to be able to get you through those like absolutely brutal turns, that's really sick. I'm really interested and excited to play with this card. And I'll definitely be looking out for it. So yeah, I think this is an easy 4 because it doesn't, you know, increase in popularity. It doesn't have the ubiquity either. But it's still a very strong card, and honestly the strongest card of the set, I would say. Up next, we have a pretty interesting card. This is Furry Sewed Girl. So it's a supporter that says search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it on your bench, then shuffle your deck. You may switch that Pokemon with your active Pokemon. I've talked a lot about how items can very easily replace supporters, especially in expanded, because there's such a deep card pool. So this is basically a nest ball plus a switch. However, I think this is a pretty interesting card in like really, really, really specific decks. It's kind of awkward, but it does go pretty well in like stall decks. You can get a stall piece moved into the active very quickly, but it's also good in like 1 attachment basic Pokemon decks. Like I keep going back to Volcarona. It's just for whatever reason the one that's in my mind, but you know, you can slam a Volcarona onto the bench, move it straight into the active, attach onto it, attack in. So I'm kind of into that. And I'm sure there will be more homes found for it. The two effects, of course, are not terribly interesting by themselves, but I think combined, it's not bad, and at least worth mentioning. I'm gonna give it a 2, and I recognize that that's probably a bit of a high rating. I'd probably give it a 1.5, but we commit to whole numbers here. Up next we have Gym Trainer. I actually gave this a -1. So another supporter that says draw 2 cards. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw 2 more cards. There are so many, I say so many, there are quite a few cards with either you have to have more prizes than your opponent, or your opponent has to have knocked something out last turn. The one that comes to mind is Teammates, because you just search up 2 cards, I believe. That's Teammates, right? Searching 2 cards rather than drawing 4 is so much better. It's insane. I don't even care that Teammates can't be played unless something got knocked out. Draw 4s on supporters are very bad, because there's a lot of these supporters, right, that are like, oh, draw 2 and then another conditional draw 2. I think there's another one here that we'll be talking about. But having the second draw 2 having to be on a Pokemon one of your Pokemon getting KO'd is just so unbelievably bad, because there are so many cards with such better effects. So never play this card, except maybe in your like pre-release or whatever. Lance is another supporter that says search your deck for up to 3 dragon Pokemon, then put them into your hand, then shuffle. So this is, I believe, what was it? Winona, but for dragon Pokemon instead of colorless Pokemon. These are not terribly good. I could see maybe like if there was like a Regidrago, but like a Regidrago deck, but even at that, like there's just better ways to do the Regidrago thing, right? Like you can just Deden draw, Crobat draw, Research draw. I think this is going to be generally more consistent. Like you just find your Nest Balls, not your Nest Balls. You find your Ultra Balls, your Quick Balls, and just turbo through your deck, and then set up the Regidrago, because you're trying to discard a lot too, right? So it helps a lot on both ends, doing that kind of turbo plan, whereas the Lance is kind of just like, you have the 3 dragon Pokemon into your hand, and then you got to figure out how to discard them, which is kind of not kind of into that, and you don't have the extra resources that you get from all the other card draw. So yeah, I'm gonna give that a 1. I don't think it makes it into the Regidrago deck, honestly. If it does, it's gonna be like a 1 of, but I would be surprised if it made the cut. Up next, we have a Leafy Camel Poncho. Gave this one a nice little 3 rating. If this Pokemon this card is attached to is a V-Star or V-Max, whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to that Pokemon. So this is tool number 4. So I think this is a pretty good option against, I think this is going to be at least a 1 of in most V decks. Whether it's going to be worth it is, like, it's going to be a 1 of in the early Silver Tempest metagame, because I think that anti-gusting on, like, a bench Shadow Rider, anti-gusting on, like, some Palkia or something that you're trying to set up, or an Arceus that you're trying to set up, like, I think these are really strong options. Whether you would want to play it over Earth and Sealstone, or no, sorry, Forest Sealstone, whether you would want to play this over Forest Sealstone, because again, a lot of the decks that you would want to play Leafy Camo Poncho in because they are for V-Stars and V-Maxes, it's going to overlap with Shadow Rider. Maybe it ends up that Shadow Rider plays both, but I would imagine it just plays the Seal Stone instead. But I think in decks that can afford the tool space in terms of the deck space and, you know, attaching to the Pokemon, where this has, you know, this kind of like qualifies in terms of like the V-Star VMAX restriction, and you want a lot of targets for that. It's got to be like, your deck's got to be like mostly V-Stars and VMAXs. I would say like 80%, right? So, or like in terms of like what you want to be sitting on the bench. I think this card will make it into a considerable amount of decks. So yeah, a 3 is, I think, deserving. Unfortunately, it, of course, like so many cards that say V or V Star or V Max on them, it only gets worse when Scarlet and Violet comes out, which, in terms of design, I really hate, but still a solid card. Primordial Altar is our stadium of the set. Once during each player's turn, that player may look at the top card of their deck. They may discard that card. So this is like a weird, I don't even know. I think there's like an ability. Oh yeah, the Kyurem VMAX is kind of like this, except you get to attach an energy if that's an energy that you discarded. So the amount of like impact other stadiums, even like very, very passive stadiums like Chaotic Swell have, like, this is just like a waste of a card slot in almost every deck. Like Pokestop is in standard right now, and I think wherever you are playing Primordial Altar, you're probably playing Pokestop. So I don't know why this card was printed. It seems incredibly underpowered, but hey, just me, I guess. Next we have Professor Laventon. It's a supporter that says put up to 3 Pokemon that have Hisuian in their names from your discard pile into your hand. So I think it could be like potentially worth talking about if it searched instead of went from your discard pile. However, going from your discard pile means you need you need to already kind of set this up, or you are trying to use it as like a late game recovery piece, in which case I don't know why you wouldn't just use, like, there's better options. I know Rescue Stretcher gets you only 1 to the hand, but I'd rather just shuffle 3 in and try and draw them with the draw options that we have. This is just not an acceptable or playable card for Expanded. And in terms of targets too, like there's Hisuian Zorak. I can't really think of anything else that's like actually like good. I'm sure I'm missing something, but it's not terribly consequential, I'm sure. Quadstone is kind of like a callback to Lucky Charm, I guess. I think it was that, Lucky Charm. You may use 4 Quadstone cards at once. If you used 1 card, heal 10 damage from your active Pokemon. Absolutely not. If you use 4 cards, heal all damage from each of your Pokemon. So the like biggest issue of this is that it loses to prizes. If it's the last card you take, you now have 3 dead cards. If it's the last card in your prizes, you now have 3 cards. You now have 3 cards in your deck that do absolutely nothing. And when I say absolutely nothing, I know that you can heal 10 from your active, but that is basically that might as well not be there. I think that is completely irrelevant for Expanded. In terms of like healing options, this does, I mean, you have to build your deck correctly, obviously. You need everything to be evolutions, but this does basically the same thing as Cheryl. I'd much rather just, if I'm going on a healing plan, I'd rather just use a max potion, honestly. And maybe Ace Rollers, but for that effect for 4 cards is just not good enough at all. Not at all. Up next we have Serena, which I give like a regrettable 1, I guess. But I think I personally think it's a 0, but for some reason, something inside of me just feels like it has just barely enough potential because because it is modal. You can choose one of two options. So either discard up to 3 cards from your hand, you must discard at least one, then draw until you have 5, or switch one of your opponent's benched Pokemon V with their active. So it's either a conditional boss's orders or a weird like discard draw, but you have to discard at least one. So if you're empty-handed, or if this is the last card in your hand, you cannot use it. I think the somewhat flexible like draw option and being able to like synergize with the discard pile is like fine. It's cool. It's interesting. I think switching, like, I think that second option of switching your opponent's benched Pokemon V is like just decent for now. But once we get into Scarlet and Violet, I think this card is just not acceptable or playable in any way, because V's will be, behind us. And even right now, like they're like one prize matchups or like GX tag team matchups, where this card is just gonna have a single mode, and that discard draw is just like absolutely terrible compared to all of the draw options that we have, even all of the discard pile like fillers that we have, like Battle Compressor, like just unacceptable draw support. So I'm gonna give it a 1 for now, but I think it's gonna fall off once Scarlet and Violet comes. We're just gonna forget this card exists. Unidentified Fossil is an item that we have all seen before. It is we play it as a 60 HP colorless basic Pokemon. It can't retreat, and at any time during your turn, you can discard it from play. Fossils have been around for a hot minute, and they've been just not good. Just too slow, unplayably slow. Attacks aren't strong enough. They've had some like cool effects in terms of, like blocking, I think one blocked supporters or items or whatever, but there's just no like, I can't imagine an expanded fossil shell that can actually function. I'm not even say work like you make the deck do the thing and like evolve your Pokemon. I think it's just going to brick a considerable amount of the time, because just need a bunch of really, really, really bad cards, like Unidentified Fossil, unfortunately. But up next we have Wallace, which is a support that says draw 3 cards. Your opponent may draw a card. If they do, draw 1 more card. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would not like my opponent to ever draw cards if I can help it. And if I'm certainly not going to give them more cards to draw. We have fantastic draw support in the expanded metagame, and I would heavily encourage you to forget that this card exists. Worker says draw 3 cards, discard a stadium in play. I would also like to just ignore this card. Play a Field Blower and a Dedenne, or Field Blower and a Research, or 2 Field Blowers and a Research. I mean, Field Blower is just a very good card. You should just always play. I don't want to get too off topic, but there's a reasonable case to just play like 1 Field Blower in every deck, unless you just like do not care about getting bricked by abilities or getting bricked by stuff. But that's for another video. Don't play Worker. Regenerative Energy, as long as this is attached to a Pokemon and provides colorless. When you play a Pokemon from your hand to evolve the Pokemon V this card is attached to, heal 100 damage from that Pokemon. Give it like a 1 for now, but it could go up to like a 2 depending on the kind of like things that we see. Moving forward with the metagame, like if Lugia is like good, maybe you could see like 1 of in there. I think that you would probably play this in some sort of like like a slowerish kind of like build of Arceus where like you're not pulling, you may not be like going for like a straight like Wally, Starbirth, Trinity Nova turn, like turn 1 all the time. You kind of have like a slower game plan of like also some like DCEs and maybe some like single energies, and this could be like one of them. So I'm not like too high on this card, which is why I gave it a 1, but I think it's right on the fringe of playable. But I think you're generally going to want to take that option that I kind of just described. Maybe it should be like somewhere up to a 2 because healing 100 just from attaching is pretty decent. However, it should be noted that, actually no, we stick with the 1. If a V is taking a hit, it's usually getting knocked out, right? Like, we're usually getting knocked out because we're not playing like Cape of Toughness and these sort of like evolving V-Star decks. So I think we can stick with the 1. We also have V-Guard Energy. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. The Pokemon this card is attached to takes 30 less damage from the attacks of your opponent's Pokemon V. You can't apply this effect of V-Guard Energy more than once on one Pokemon. So I think this is also kind of the same realm of the goes in the slower Arceus decks where you play like, and honestly, maybe it's like slightly higher. I would actually give this one slightly higher because, and this is why, like, you know, as we've described, damage prevention is much better than healing off damage because it stops it like on the front end so you don't get knocked out. And I kind of like it in that. Obviously, it's pretty slow, so it's maybe like a turn 2, like after you've accelerated off of Trinity Nova, you've attached this type of deal. If they like gust something else up and take a hit, well, if they gust something else up and take a hit, and it doesn't get knocked out, then you could use the regenerative energy. But you could like slap a V-Guard energy on, let's say like, you know, just another Arceus that you're setting up on turn 2. Kind of into that. It's not terrible. But yeah, I guess that'll just about do it. This was a pretty quick one. I gotta say, I guess the trainers were actually a much bigger improvement. I think the star of the show, not only for the trainers, but really in terms of the whole set, is definitely Forest Seal Stone. Just a fantastic card. Basically a computer search, except you don't have to discard. Big plus for most decks. Just think it's a huge benefit for a lot of V decks that don't have a V-Star power or an adequate V-Star power. Although I would say a lot of the decks that are playing V-Stars tend to play them because their V-Stars are also very powerful in addition to their pretty good attacks, whether it's Palkia, whether it's Arceus. So yeah, definitely looking forward to playing with Forest Sealstone as well as a couple of other cards. Should be interesting. Let me know what you think. Are there any trainers or any Pokemon really anything that from the set really that I am underrating, anything that I'm overrating? I think I was pretty harsh in terms of this set review, but I definitely like the, you know, expanded community's opinion in terms of where they think this set is at, where they think certain cards are at. So yeah, give me your thoughts, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.